Hello, everyone, and welcome to the AWS Nordics office hours. My name is Gunnar Grosch, developer advocate here at AWS, based in Sweden. And this is my weekly show where I bring on AWS experts to talk about a specific topic and let you, our viewers, hopefully learn something and also ask any questions you might have on that topic or, well, I guess, any AWS-related topic. And just make sure that the chat is working. So let us know that you're here. Let us know where you're from, and let's get to it. This week, I'm happy to be joined by one of my team members, Ricardo. So this week, we're going to talk, of course, about the exciting topic that is open source. Welcome to the show, Ricardo.
Well, thank you for having me, Gunnar, and welcome everyone. My name is Ricardo Sueiras. I work with Gunnar in developer operations, and I specialize and focus in open source. What does that mean? Maybe I can hear some of you ask. It basically means that I try and help AWS be the best place for open source software. Sometimes that means talking to some of you about some of the amazing open source projects that you're doing and you're working on, and sharing that on a weekly newsletter that I'll be coming to later on. Sometimes it's creating technical content to help people build open source software on AWS and blogging. I write a lot, so hopefully we'll have lots of good open source discussion. And for people joining, I'd love to know as you're joining, not only where you're from, but what's your favorite open source software and why. I'd love to know. My favorite open source software is a tool called Node-RED. I've been using it for many, many years, and I started off using it in the IoT space. And effectively, it's an open source project that helps you really easily prototype IoT type solutions. But in the years since I've been using it, I've seen it pop up in lots of different places. So what's your favorite open source project? Gunnar, what's yours?
Oof. Putting me on the spot here to
I know.
One. I guess one of the Can I choose one of my own? Is that okay?
Of course you can. Absolutely.
Yes. All right. So then I need to plug my Failure Lambda library for doing chaos engineering on AWS Lambda.
It's a good library. I've used it. I have used it. In fact, actually, I think you might find some pull requests in your to-do list.
Oh, really? Wow. That is cool. So yeah, that's a great question for the audience. Let us know what your favorite open source is. But on that topic then, what is your definition of open source?
Oh, that's easy. So my definition of open source is any software that has an OSI approved license. So OSI, for those that may not be familiar, is the open source initiative. They create what's called the open source definition. Open source definition, OSD for short, is a set of 10 rules that any license needs to comply to. And so the OSI governs that, and it's all open and transparent. You can go online, you can look at the mailing lists. And effectively, they maintain and manage the lists of open source licenses. There's about probably maybe 70 plus licenses. There's not a huge amount. Some of them are more popular than others. So the ones that probably people on the call are familiar would be things like MIT, BSD, Apache 2, GPL, Mozilla public license. So there's loads of different licenses, but they all comply to the OSD. So in a nutshell, a piece of software that has a license file that's licensed according to one of those is what I think of, and not just me, I think probably most people think of as open source.
Great. All right, so we have some answers in the chat. Teriyaki Stream writes Microsoft Visual Studio. I guess that's the code one.
Yeah, Visual Code, absolutely. Yeah, that's a great. It's my preferred editor, so I use that. So absolutely, it's a great piece of open source software.
And Mookie Monkey writes JavaScript. Is that considered open source?
That's a good question. I think it might be, but I'm not. I'm not sure. I'm more of a Python person than a JavaScript person. So if Python is, I know Python's open source. It's got its own license as well. I'm assuming it must be all that, and I think that maybe maybe someone who's a JavaScript expert can chime in. I know Node, for example. Node is definitely open source. Underneath my hoodie, I've got a T-shirt which says "Open source is art," which is actually from Nearform, which is a great open source company based in Ireland, and they do a lot of the kind of development of Node. So I know that a lot of the big JavaScript frameworks and libraries are open source. I just assumed it was so.
I guess it is. Yeah, I think so as well. All right, so keep your comments coming. And,
please.
Of course, any questions you might have as well.
Yeah.
All right. So you mentioned your newsletter, Ricardo. So should we perhaps start there?
Yeah, let's start there. So if you can put that up on the screen, I thought just to kind of try and kind of keep the conversation going, I'll kind of walk through last week's kind of big news, I guess. So for those who might not be familiar, I do a weekly newsletter. So this is number 107, which means I've been doing this for 107 weeks. That's over 2 years, which is quite, it's weird. It doesn't seem that it's been that long. But there are lots of really cool things that happen on a week-to-week basis. So effectively what I do is I kind of like try and be frugal with your time and condense just the good stuff. And I've changed it over years, right? So now what I found, because most of my audience is builders and developers, I could try and kind of find the projects that they will be useful. And I kind of sort of try and put them in 3 buckets, okay? I put the open source projects that are created by the community. So these are non-AWS typically authored projects, but that somehow improve your life as a developer on AWS. Sometimes they're not specific exclusive to AWS. Sometimes they work on lots of other providers as well, which is great. Okay. Then I have tools. So these are kind of like useful open source tools that will make your life easier. So it could be how they improve your development, your testing, or your deployment. And then the final kind of bucket is kind of like sample projects that are kind of more, I guess, tied to AWS specifically. But if you're learning or new to AWS, or you want to do something, then they can often be a really good way of learning about how to do stuff. This morning I was doing a lecture at a university on open source. And one of the things I really like about open source is because it has these 4 freedoms, the ability to kind of view and edit and change the source code, run it, copy it, distribute it. Looking at these open source projects really kind of gives you an insight into how people have solved a particular problem. And so you can learn about it. So even maybe if the project is not something you might find useful today, it's always useful to know where these things live. So you can go back to them and say, well, how did this person solve this problem? And what code can I borrow from that? What code or how can I improve this? So that's what I love about, kind of these kind of 3 categories of projects.
We have some comments in the chat. First off, a wow about 2 years of the newsletter, and I agree on that. That's really awesome.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, it's a bit of a labor of love for me. I'm one of these people, Gunnar, that when I get into something, I kind of obsess over it. And I've got a record collection in the other room, and everything is perfectly organized, right? And my son now is getting into records, and he's listening to them, and he's messing with my system. So I take the same approach with these newsletters, right? Everyone is carefully curated to hopefully give builders a nice experience. So I do hope that they're useful to you. But what I will say is, if there's something that in there that you'd like to see, if there's something that some way I can improve it for you, then please let me know. And also, if you've got your own projects, come speak to me. I want to know. I want to feature your projects in the newsletter. At the moment, sorry.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say that's definitely one of the things that I see the community love. When
Yeah.
someone gets that mention in one of your posts about the newsletter, that's a big thing in the builder community.
Yeah, I mean, I love doing that. I mean, because one of the things about open source, right, is that there's a big when you look at contributions, obviously writing the code is important, but contributions cover a lot of different areas, and I like to think that one of the things I can do and contribute to projects is help raise awareness of it. So if I can do a small thing to help projects, increase visibility for other AWS customers, then that's great. And actually, I last week, and actually it's interesting because sometimes you don't realize a particular topic is going to be really, really, really interesting. So actually, I'm gonna, before I dive into this one, I'm going to just have a look at last week's newsletter, which there's. So let's have a look. So there was a couple of interesting projects, but this one, the AWS Slack ClickOps Watcher, right? So this project from Paul allows you to kind of monitor your AWS accounts for changes in the console, right? And then it sends a Slack message. And I found this. I think I commented that. I think I saw it on a Corey Quinn newsletter or tweet. I can't remember where I found it. But if I do find it somewhere, I try and give a mention to where I found it. Now this project, okay, was viewed loads of times. I think it's over 100 times people have checked out this project from this newsletter. And I got a nice message from Paul as a thank you. So Paul, if you're watching, keep going. It's a great project, and so I like how we can help amplify these projects that these builders are creating. And it's not always the ones you think. So I would never have thought that one would have been the hot topic, right? But it was. So getting those insights and sharing those insights from time to time in the newsletter, I'll like once every or 1 or 2 times a year, I will try and share things like what's the most popular topics, how many different people have written from how many different countries, which are the hot countries for open source activity. So at the moment, that's US, India, UK, Germany, and Australia. Lots of open source development happening in those regions. So keep it up. So I like to kind of sort of do that. So I see we've got some more questions coming. Drupal is also great in terms of content. Yeah, Drupal is a great project actually, and I've done quite a bit of work in Drupal in the past actually. And it's good, Drupal is based on PHP, and PHP is still super popular because of tools like WordPress and Drupal, and there is a project this week on PHP. So let's go through them now, shall we? Let's get a quick drink of water.
Yeah, I think your screen, there's something with a refresh of your screen.
Yeah, I'm not sure what's going on here.
Strange,
yeah, it's not. It's Let's try changing it and see if that works. Yep, not sure what's going on. There's something going on, isn't there? Let's have a. Yeah, I think. Let me try and stop sharing and reset.
Maybe I can remove it and just add it now.
No, I'm gonna stop sharing my screen and then try again.
Yeah, let's do that.
It wouldn't be a session.
No, there has to be something every time. In the meantime, I'm also interested to see if any of the viewers are involved in any open source projects. If you are contributing in any way. There we go. It looks good right now. Let's see
Fingers
what
crossed.
happens when you scroll.
No, it's doing it again. Why is it doing that? I tell you what. Let me. I'm not sure why it's doing that. Maybe if I just. No, it's okay. Let's try sharing maybe just a tab, or rather than the whole window. Let's just share a application. Share screen.
Right.
Okay, let's have a look. Chrome.
It may be open source code. That's why. There's a comment in the chat. That's harsh.
Okay, so hopefully that's going to just have a look. This one works. This is
Yay.
good. Good. Yes. So yeah, well, before we joined, actually, I was saying that Chrome was not playing nicely on sharing, so I had to switch to Firefox. So maybe that's a problem. So okay, so let's take a look at last week's interesting projects. And if you're in the comments, let me know what projects you've been looking at recently as well, or any projects you're contributing to. Yes, Leap, great project. I'll talk about that actually now that this project is kind of similar in a way. So AWS BE site, what this project does is it allows you to quickly access different AWS accounts. So you've all been in the situation where you're in the console and you want to access a different AWS account, and you've got to do the whole thing with incognito browser modes or different browser sessions, that kind of thing. And what this command line tool does is it allows you to create effectively links and open up browsers, very similar to in a way what Leap does, which is it's a really nice tool. If you haven't seen Leap, then it's a really great tool for how you access your access keys to different AWS accounts and different environments. So I use it to kind of, like, for example, connect to all my different AWS accounts, and I've got a different I've organized it by different sort of folders. So definitely worth, if you're working with lots of different accounts and different environments, I definitely think you should try out Leap. So thanks for sharing that. So this project's interesting. Let's see if I can go into. Hopefully we can see that. Yeah, it's working. So this is actually the project. So it tells you, it gives you a little bit of a demo here, and then it shows you how you can actually get started to run this on yourself. I think it's a Go application. I think this one, if I remember right, seeing rightly. And it should work. I've not actually tested this one out yet on my machine. So some of the projects I get a chance to try, and some I don't. So this one is quite an interesting project if you need to work with lots of different environments.
And I think this goes back to what you said initially. Something that solves a problem for a developer or a builder out there, being able to easily switch between multiple AWS accounts, which is the way that most build. Using multiple AWS accounts, since that's what we also say is the best practice.
Yeah, totally. So next one we've got from an AWS community builder, Michael Brewer. This one should be more up your street, Gunnar. It's a project to help, I think, kind of build and test your serverless applications, right? So I think it's if I go to the actual documentation here, you go to click on one of these links, and it provides you all these resources plus the tool that allows you to very easily do local testing of your application. So it's a really kind of very comprehensive kind of list here of different events. So you've got, for example, samples, sample requests you can use, and there's also, if I remember rightly, there is a CLI tool that goes with it. So you can look at the CLI tool, and here they show you, for example, how to get it started, and at the bottom, some examples of actually how to use it. Again, this is something that's really super important if you're putting a project together. I see varying levels of quality in these projects. Aim to try and make it as easy as possible for someone coming to your project or coming to your GitHub repo or GitLab if you're using GitLab to get started with your project as soon as possible. So give them examples, give them some documentation like this, which shows really easily how to get started, and that's kind of half the battle, right?
That's really cool. And once again, great example of a project that solves something for developers, having those test events available in an easy way. Yep.
Cool. Some of the projects that I share are still in the early stages. So this one from Julio, my old colleague, he used to work in DevRel with us. He's now at Red Hat. And this is a project for developers to help automate some of their tasks. So in specifically here, if I go down, where is it? So here, for example, let's say you've got an AWS environment and you want to automate the cleaning up of all the resources based on a prefix. So let's say you create a CDK application, you name all your. This is what I do. I have a prefix for all my resources based on the stuff I'm doing. So having a tool that helps me clean all that up is super useful. And this is early because Julio wants to try and figure out how to add more functionality to this tool. So, if you're looking for local sort of kind of tools to help, make your administration of sort of development tasks easier, then quite often there's lots of projects you can actually you join to help that. So this is Task Tree. This one is quite a nice one actually. So AWS Search Extension. So this actually is a plugin for the browser. So let's show you how it works. So if I do if I type in ASE and space, you can see I've got now AWS Search Extension. If I do slash and then let's do lambda. Oh. Lambda. You can't see that actually. It doesn't actually on my screen. I can see the search bars now pull down a whole bunch of documents, which unfortunately you can't see because of the way that the sharing has been done. But effectively, you can see as I scroll through the list, you can actually see it in the address bar though.
Yeah.
And it kind of like it does a fuzzy search to all the AWS API documentation. And then allows you to really easily find stuff on search. And actually, if we go back to the project and look at the documentation, it actually gives you some examples of how you can actually use it. So here's actually what I could see, which you couldn't see because of the sharing. And then you can see, I think there's some supported queries here. So you can do, for example, / to see all of them, or you can just do this one here for the CloudFormation stuff, which is really cool. I know for me, when I'm doing this, I always use Google searches, and it takes me ages to find documentation. So I install this straight away because I know this is going to be super useful for me. And it works for Chrome and Firefox because I've installed it on both, and it's working on both. So this is the actual project, but you can actually go to the plugin repositories for both browsers and just install it and running straight from there. So you don't need to do any. I mean, obviously they've just shared the code so you can have a look at it.
Yeah, oh, really cool.
So this is a really nice project. This one. Okay, what's next? Right, so those were the community projects. Now we're going to kind of move on to the tools. So this one really is for anyone who's doing stuff in Kubernetes. So I'm not sure how familiar people are, but with the next release, I believe Kubernetes are planning to remove the Docker Shim, and the Docker Shim is effectively the piece of code that allows you to use Docker Engine as a runtime for your containers. But because the Docker Engine, I think it's called CRI compliant. I think that's what it is. Many years ago, they developed a standard by which Kubernetes would run your container engine. It had to be CRI, so effectively things like Containerd and others. And so for a period of time, they carried on building this piece of software, this Docker Shim, that allows you to use Docker. But as of 1.24, that will no longer be there, right? So this tool will help you find all your environments, all your clusters, and find out how many are dependent on this. So if we go onto the documentation, we can see that we've got information on how to run the tool, how to install it, how it works, and in fact, all the different resources in Kubernetes that it will work against. So again, if you're using Kubernetes, in any meaningful way, and you want to just check to see if you're exposed, then this is definitely a must try tool, really.
It's very cool. Can you use this? Is this with standalone installed Kubernetes, or can you use it with EKS as well? Or would you use it?
You can use this with EKS, yeah, absolutely. So I think somewhere here, where is it? Somewhere up. I can't remember where it is. I think it's definitely near somewhere, because I was reading it and it works for EKS and standard and Kubernetes. So yeah, it's a standard Kubernetes thing, so it should work with EKS. Yep. But it was created by by folks in the containers team. So I'd imagine it definitely has been tested against that.
Yeah.
So
yep.
So yeah, so that's definitely a must check out project if you're using Kubernetes. Now, Nest is a JavaScript framework, and this is a really nice little project. What I like about it is it does something important. It basically makes integration to S3 easy for people in the project. So if you want to share, for example, files. But what I really liked about it, actually, where is it? Let's close that. Was that they actually put together a really nice blog post that talks you through the whole journey of the problem they're trying to solve, and then creating the project and iterating of the project until they got to the solution. And I like it because quite often open source projects start off as the solution to a problem that people have. We call that the itch that developers are trying to scratch, right? It's in I think it's in the book The Cathedral and the Bazaar. And it's a well-known phenomenon, around open source projects, why they exist. And so it was really nice to kind of see this walkthrough, which talks through their experience of doing it, right? And if you're new to open source, or you've not done open source before and you want to just see what it feels like or looks like, it's blog posts like this that can maybe put a bit more color on the experience and help you kind of understand what a typical journey looks like. So kudos to Martin for putting that together and their project. Okay, so the next project is Slither. So this one actually I did manage to get up and running. Let's have a look if I can get the actually I just realized I can't share it because I'm only sharing my browser window, so I'm not going to share it. So that is a pain. That is. So what this does, it's a very simple script, and some of the projects, right, are as simple as a little tool like this that helps you create an audit of your S3 buckets. Right. So you give it a bucket, and then it tells you effectively what the different permissions are within all the folders and the files within that project. So I ran it. I can't share it because of the screen sharing limitations, but it gives you color coded. So green is all good, amber, and then red for things you need to look at. So I kind of like that. And it saves me having to do it manually, right? So yeah, there's quite a few tools like that I find from time to time, and Slither is one of them. The next tool is AWS Cognito, which the clue in the name there, and this one's for PHP fans and actually people who are using Laravel, which is one of the popular PHP frameworks. So this allows you to easily integrate AWS Cognito, right? So very nice. I did try the demo application earlier on. It wasn't working. Let's try if it works now. Nope, it's not. Okay. Never mind. But again, going back to what you typically look for and need in a project like this, right? The features, how you install it, and then actually the details from an AWS perspective, how you configure it, and then with plenty of examples, right? So I know I'm scrolling through very, very quickly, but I just want to give you a feel for how detailed this project is. And so if you're a PHP or Laravel developer and you're looking to integrate some kind of identity management, authentication using something like Cognito, then this is this should hopefully make it easy for you. Okay, so that's kind of that's the first two sections, right? So that's just like the tools piece I've just finished, and then the community ones. The next group really are the ones that tend to be authored from AWS, not always, but mostly, that showcase how to do stuff, but showcase it in a way that's open source, which means you can take these as a foundation for your own projects. So before I begin, for the people who are on the stream, what have you thought so far of the projects? Do any of them look interesting to you? Which ones do you think you might you might try? I'm kind of curious to see what your thoughts are on the Twitch channel.
For me, for sure, I'm going to try out the one from Michael Brewer with the testing events.
I thought you might.
Yeah.
I thought that one had your name all over it.
Yeah.
Cool. So this one, AWS Do PM, I think this one's a really interesting one because it's quite a meaty project, this one. So I'm going to go into it just to kind of give you a feel for this. But let's just close these windows. So this is the project that effectively is a framework. And it's a framework that allows you to create and deploy easily predictive models. Actually, they actually have a diagram of what the actual framework looks like. So this is the framework. So and it should be agnostic. Okay, it should be agnostic to actually how it's container based, and effectively the framework is the kind of the layers here. So if you're building a kind of preventative maintenance machine learning model, okay, you can package up your application here, and then deploy it potentially in any orchestrator. So it could be Docker, it could be EKS, it could be something else, right? And what this framework does, okay, is it allows, actually, let's scroll down, allows you to effectively kind of do a whole bunch of steps that you typically do in a machine learning model basis. Actually, it's where is it? Here's the demo. So what the demo does, okay, so it actually has got a demo. It takes the typical things you would do if you were creating or needing to collect data from an EV, right? So in this specific example, they want to get the data from the battery, and so effectively the framework allows you to sort of break down all the tasks, and then package up the applications, and then do it so that you can actually create this feedback loop for creating your model, but then also allows you to then do that at scale with fleets. So I think if you're doing any sort of kind of work in this space, definitely check this project out because it is kind of interesting. So it's a framework with a specific example, which means that you could potentially use this framework for other things. Okay. So this is quite a deep dive. You have to probably spend a bit of time sort of like, getting your head around some of the things. But if you're, working in data science and machine learning, it's definitely a project for you.
And this was an AWS one, you said?
Yeah. This is an AWS one. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So that's the first project. The second one is interesting if you're using Apache Airflow on AWS. So we have a managed service called Noir, and what this project does is it allows you to actually let's open it up. It allows you to extract all the data from the metadata base. So in Airflow, you have a database which contains all the metadata of all the workflow. So typically, it contains things like connection data, user secrets, which are used in your workflows. But then when your workflows are actually executing, the tasks in their workflow, the state, how long they took to run, whether they worked or not, all that information is also stored in the metadata base. And it's obviously a very useful information if you want to try and understand how healthy your workflow situation is. Are you detecting any trends? Are your workflows taking longer or less time over time? And so this basically is a walkthrough with code that shows you how to extract that information using some of our ETL processes, and then put them in Athena and then report on them on QuickSight. So whilst these aren't specific, so actually, and there's a blog post that goes with this as well. Actually, I think I even might have actually referred to that. Actually, it's actually further down in the actual newsletter. But there's actually a blog post that actually walks you through, including gives you examples of what the dashboards look like. So again, useful if you're using Apache Airflow, which I've been doing a lot of stuff recently. So super interesting to me.
Rumor has it that you might even have something to show in that space later on, right?
Yeah, well, if we get time, then yes,
Yep.
absolutely. I'll give a quick walkthrough on that. Absolutely.
Cool.
The next sample is people hopefully are familiar with AppRunner, which is one of the nicest ways and quickest ways of getting a containerized application up and running. This is a sample project that lets you figure out how to do this on .NET, .NET Core, and also shows you how to speak to a database, an RDS database, right? So again, .NET Core applications are really good candidates for modernization because they are by nature open source, which means you can run them on Linux operating systems, and you can run them in Lambda functions or containers. So it's really nice that here's a good sample to show you how you can actually integrate with a database. So I really like these kind of projects because they can really accelerate people and know how to get started on these. For me, I'm not very good at reading documentation. Give me a project. I'll try and get it running, and then in the process of getting it running when it doesn't work, I learn so much more about how to fix it than I would probably from reading something myself, right? So, and maybe some of you can relate to that.
I like the word you said, accelerate, because that's really what these often are about.
Yeah,
having that quicker way of getting started than actually trying things out, which
is
definitely the way I learn as well.
Yeah, exactly. And I think a lot of people are, I think it's a builder mentality, isn't it? Just kick the tires and see. And actually, quite often, your experience of how well then if you come back to that project will be determined on your experience, right? So, so anyway, so that's AppRunner. Next one is S3 bucket key proof of concept. Very interesting. I didn't know this, right? So this project is great for those people like me who are frugal with their money. And it provides a proof of concept that shows you how you can reduce your traffic by up to 99% to your S3 buckets, right? So who doesn't want to do that, right? So effectively, this will walk you through the different ways of doing it, because there's a diagram here. I've not tried the proof of concept yet. But it's interesting, right? So if you can reduce, your traffic by 97%, then that's a good thing.
Yeah,
and I think that's I've as a trend in the last 3 months, I've seen quite a few of these sample, what I call benchmarking type projects that help you kind of set your for your own environment tests to compare the performance or costs of different approaches. There was one actually a couple of weeks ago on Kafka streaming. So if you're working with streaming data, there's a kind of it's like a benchmarking tool that allows you to compare the impact of different performance options in your own setup, right? So I really like a lot of those projects, because those are the ones I used to do myself, right? So if there's one already existing there, then great. Okay, so the next one, super interesting, Sig4VA. Now, for those people who aren't familiar with Sig4, this is the way that I believe we encrypt and authenticate all the requests to AWS endpoint APIs. But they are bound by service and region, I believe, okay, with standard v4. Sig4A extends that model to multi-region, okay? And so this contains code and signing examples of how you can do it. Now, at the moment, only these 3 languages are covered. And if you go into the Python one, which is my preferred one, it's got examples, for example, of how you can then show this working for a multi-region setup, which is really, really cool. But you will notice that there's some others here. So maybe people who are on the call might want to give this a go, give this a try, and see if they want to add a Go or a Rust. Rust seems to be very popular. Maybe they want to have a go with some Rust examples. So there's the challenge for people attending today. But yeah, interesting little sample for getting your head round Sig4A. I think we're coming towards the end now. I think this is the last one. There's a couple more. So this next one is a nice one around securing content using cookies. So this is the architecture that effectively this example project builds. But what I like about it is that there's a demo, I think, at the bottom. Yeah, here we go. So you run the demo, okay, and without the pre-signed key, you don't get access to the actual content on CloudFront. But once you actually generate the key, you can see you get the graphic image. So again, if you want to try and control access to your content on your CloudFront distribution, there's a number of ways you can do it. This provides a nice example of one of the ways you might want to do that. So I'm sure there's a few people that might find that useful as well. And then the next one is a kind of effectively it's like I guess a reference architecture almost of how to use CDK to build a hardened Elastic Beanstalk application. And again, we've got quite a few of these for different languages and different AWS services where they try and put together best practices, and then they kind of codify that in a CDK application. So I think this is a TypeScript one. So I don't really do TypeScript, unfortunately. I should learn it. But again, you can use this to, and they've also got a blog post. Quite a few of these projects also then kind of come with a blog post, and the blog post walks you through step by step all the different components of the CDK stack. So definitely worth checking out some of those. And like I said, I tend to share those in my weekly roundup. So keep your eyes peeled for those ones. And then I think it's the final one. I think, yep, this is the final one. So the interactive video service effectively is a bunch of components that you can build your own tool like Twitch, right? And this project is one around fitness. So you can build your own fitness application. Not that, for example, it would help me improve my fitness, although maybe it will. I don't know. So yes, you can effectively reproduce this whole experience using that service. But what I liked about this, I didn't realize this, is they also have a web page that shows all their other samples as well. So interactive video is not just about fitness. It can be about creating a Twitch, doing gaming, all these different sample projects. All the code is available. Which means if you want to do something, then you can use these as the basis of your project, right? And quite often, a lot of them are really solid, from a features perspective. So that is kind of like the roundup, really, of all the projects, right? So that's kind of the first chunk of the newsletter, right? The next chunk, really, which I'm not going to go into too much detail because I want to see if I can do a more detailed demo, but I also cover blog posts as well, and these are all more from a builder kind of hands-on perspective, covering again community-based projects. So for example, Access Undenied, for those people who might not have seen this, really nice project released I think a couple of weeks ago, and effectively what it does, it takes the logs and output from your CrowdTrail and then tells you, how to fix it, right? Why you got that error. So that is super useful, right? So definitely a project, and this blog post gives you an example of how to use it. And then Replibyte, from one of my favorite open source projects, Coveri. This is a really cool open source project that really, you can think of it as like, how to accelerate your deployments on AWS. They've created a really nice suite of tools, and they also have a cloud-based service as well in case you don't want to do it yourself. You want to use their service, and they create also a whole bunch of other tools. And so this one, Replibyte, allows you to sync Postgres, and I think Mongo as well. It works with MongoDB. Allows you to synchronize very, very quickly databases, and it does things like does obfuscation, data masking, all that kind of stuff. So if you're working with Postgres data, and you're looking at tools around how you do the QA testing and that kind of thing, very, very nice project to get involved in. And so there's lots of kind of like other posts. So ProGen is like CDK, but for your developer tools. CDK8 is for Kubernetes. So rather than it synthesize CloudFormation templates, it synthesizes Kubernetes manifest files. And our AWS community builder, Vudao, there, very prolific writer, writes so much, is great. He's a really, really great author. He puts together a series of these kind of posts. So that's great stuff. So I don't want to cover too much. There's lots of really cool stuff, including also another topic, which is sometimes, people want to use a particular open source project, not product, and they want to know how to get it running on AWS in an optimized way. So Medusa, for example, is an e-commerce system. So I include those so that, if you are using things like, these tools, there's actually another one for Magma, I think. I'm not sure if it's, is it further down or, let's have a look. Airflow, Flink, Hive, Magma. Yeah, so Magma is, this one is a well-known tool for creating, I believe, telecom systems. And this very, very comprehensive deep dive blog post with code shows you how to kind of create not just an optimized version, but also create a CI/CD system around that as well, right? So, we try and include walkthroughs for those. And then kind of like the very end of the newsletter, I try and include a couple of videos because some people prefer to look at videos. So this is one of our colleagues, Francois, who looks at Blazor, which is an open source WebAssembly framework from Microsoft. And there's lots of different options on how you get that on AWS. And so he did this really nice presentation on that. And then there's that Replibyte again. Francois, he did a very short video on how to actually use it. And then the kind of the end of the newsletter really is around events. So again, for people on the call, if you have got any open source events that you want me to plug in my weekly newsletter, please let me know. I'll include it. So I would love to have more community related events rather than some of these bigger ones, right? I do include both, but I try and focus on the community ones if possible. So that's the newsletter.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of stuff there. And like I said, if you get bored of number 107, there's 106 other ones you can read.
Yeah, well, as you mentioned, you've done this for 2 years now, and that's impressive to put this amount of information out every week for 2 years. So keep them coming.
Yeah, it is, and I think what I found is that it never ceases to amaze me the amazing breadth and variety of open source projects that the community builds, both internally in AWS with our open source builders internally, but also, our customers and other open source builders.
And you asked the question before what people were interested in, and we have some answers there. AWS Lambda events, a couple of callouts for Slither as well, and Young Jaya like the ISV feed web demo project.
I agree. I think the IVS ones are interesting because I tried one a while ago and it just worked, and it was really slick. And I can see people using that, in coding clubs and in hackathons as a really nice baseline for stuff they're doing within their kind of submission. So so some cool stuff there.
And I really like that part of open source in this case, that those are samples that you can basically take, just copy and use as you wish, since they are open sourced.
Absolutely. I mean, like I said, it's the nature of open source. So when Gunnar and me were talking before it started, we thought, we want to show you something a bit more meaningful, and so there's a number of options we've got, to talk about. So we're going to let the community, the people who are joining here, decide what we do. Okay. So last week I was very lucky enough to do a session on robotics. So robotics operating system is probably the most well-known open source robotic framework for doing that. So I've got an interesting demo on that if people are interested in robotics. But maybe folks are more interested in data, and so I've got a project on Apache Airflow, which I'm currently working. It's actually this week on Wednesday. I'm doing a talk at KubeCon Data on building hybrid workflows using Apache Airflow. So I can walk people through the kind of the demo. I can't actually show it that one, but I can walk people through the demo. And the last one, which is on Thursday, is another event I'm doing, and I'm talking about multi-architecture pipelines. So Graviton 2 and Graviton 3 is probably my most favorite technology at the moment, because I love how it helps customers reduce their carbon footprint by lowering the or being more efficient. And so one of the things that I see customers looking to do is how do they start moving to that. And so obviously building multi-architecture pipelines so you can get your code into both ARM and x86. So I've got like an architecture which I'm going to be talking about on Thursday, which I can share. So I think I'm going to let the community figure out what they want to where they want me to go.
Yeah, go ahead. Put it in the chat. What do you
want to see? So do you want to see robotics? Do you want to see workflow orchestration, or do you want to see multi-architecture? So let's we'll give it a couple of minutes, and if no one decides, I'll decide for you all.
Yeah, and we have 9 minutes till top of the hour, so
yeah,
it's going to be a quick demo.
Robotics. Well, someone's spoken. Robotics.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think let's do robotics. Let's do robotics.
Let's do it.
Okay, let's do robotics. Okay, so now I'm going to hope this works because of the screen sharing. But let's so yes, robotics. First of all, I'm going to show. So actually, before I'm going to try and share my presentation. Actually, right? Actually, no. It's here. Actually, it's here. Yes, excellent. So we've got this. So rather than do a presentation on this, what I normally do is I like drawing, and so I try and kind of showcase what open source robotics is. Let's make this bigger. Is that working? Why isn't that working? I'm not sure why that's not working. Let's have a look. Can I make that bigger? Nope. I've completely messed that up. Let's try making that smaller then. Right. Okay. I'm trying to make that the actual drawing bigger, but hopefully you can see it. So one of the things that is interesting is if you think about what a robot is, it's something really that can sense its environment, that based on that input can do some computation, and then based on that computation can then do something, act. So we have this like sense, compute, act definition of what a robot is. And when you think about actually how hard robotics is in the real world, okay, there are a number of reasons why it's hard, right? And I've got them listed here as the kind of the 5 things. The first thing is, in order to create a robot, you need to be an expert in lots of things. Okay, so you might need to be an expert in mechatronics, in computer vision, in mapping, in coding, all these different areas. Now, the second thing is that actually all the tools and software required to across all those domains is complex to set up. And then the third thing is that a lot of this is physical, so you actually need to get the physical hardware, and that can be expensive. It can be hard to store. And then kind of when you kind of work towards creating your robot, doing it once is fine, but doing it at scale is hard. So you have to kind of figure out how to do this at scale using things like fleet management. And then of course when you create your robot, the moment you create it, there's always going to be someone who wants to add a new feature or fix a bug. So you need some kind of life cycle, right, which allows you to improve and add new features and all that kind of stuff. And so ROS, Robotic Operating System, is the kind of the open source framework that really has evolved over the last 17 years to help so developers digitize all of those things and apply modern software development techniques, so the SDLC, to robotics. Okay, so I'm going to show you a very quick demo. There is this kind of like this virtual robotics challenge, and what they do is they have these virtual robotics competition, and they have a number of different competitions. And this one is how, for example, to create autonomous vehicles to do things. So in this instance, it's actually how you can create this sailing boat to maybe go around the sea and collect information about the health of the water, or maybe to track rubbish that's floating in the sea, that kind of thing. And so if you wanted to create a robot, okay, to do this, you can use ROS to simplify that by creating effectively 2 things. First of all, a simulation of your environment. So in this instance, you can see very much like a gaming world. this immersive 3D environment. And the second thing is the robot itself. So the code representation and all the physical representation of the actual the robot. So that's the boat in the middle. So let's actually show a project where I can actually show some of this working. It's actually where is it gone? Is it here? Yeah, it's here. So I've got this project here where we've got can everyone see that? Yeah, I think they can see. Is it? I think it's big enough, isn't it? So we can see that it's standard code, right? And I can very quickly launch. I'd launched it earlier on. I can launch the simulation world and then that robot, which is all in code, and through one of our services called RoboMaker. Okay, and RoboMaker basically puts all those tools together and makes it really easy for you to not have to worry about managing all those things and get started. Now, at the moment, it doesn't look very interesting, but I can start up a virtual desktop. And it should, hopefully, we should start seeing it. This is going to now show us that simulated world. Hopefully, fingers crossed, if the demo works. Okay, let's have a look. Why isn't that coming up? There we go. So what you're seeing here is the code that I've got running here. And what I can do is I can actually create, let's make sure, actually, let's have a look at this one here. I can actually, if I start steering this boat by launching another application. So let's have a look at, I've got to get the code. So let's have a look.
2 minutes.
I know, 2 minutes.
Lots of time.
Lots of time. So now I've got basically a control, and I can start using the keys. Which one is it? Is it U, I? Now, hopefully, if I go back to here, you should start seeing the boat moving. There we go. We got the boat moving. We got the robot moving, right? And effectively, what we're doing, okay, is that even though this is all digital, this is actually a like-for-like representation of what the robot would be like if we were to make a physical version of it. So what this allows you to do is effectively do all the hard work in a simulator in code and get to the stage where you then only have to then physically assemble the robot and then do the translation or the porting of your code into the robot ready to go. The code already knows what sensors and what devices that are there because you've done that in the simulator. So you don't have to worry about tuning the device drivers or configuring the device drivers. That's already been done in the simulator. And in theory, that's the theory, it should be ready to go. Now, people who have been using AWS Deep Racer, this is a good example of this in process, right? Yeah. You train in the Deep Racer console, you put your model on the stick, you put it on the physical car goes around the track, and that's effectively the same thing, but this one is a boat. So who's to know what might happen in the future? Maybe we'll have a Deep Racer for water. So I just wanted to share that. I know we've only got 2 minutes, so that's a quick demo of this project, which you can get right up and running on RoboMaker in literally. That took me all of probably about an hour or so to get up and running.
I shared a link to your robotics resources in the chat as well, so do check that out.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks for that. Yeah. So I think that's pretty much it for me. I think we've covered a lot of ground today, and I hope people have found some of that useful.
Yeah. Thanks a lot, Ricardo, for joining us today, and thanks for all the viewers being with us and your comments in the chat. Fun to see what you're doing with open source and what you're interested in. So with that, it's time to wrap up. Thanks again, Ricardo. Thanks for being here. And I hope to see many of you again next week on the next episode.
Yep.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for coming. And thanks for having me.